Hello everyone, this is Jotto, and welcome to the Managrind tournament recap, talking about the top decks, talking about the top cards, and the state of the metagame, which comes out on an article on Friday on hearthstone.com, so by all means go check that out. Now before we start, my next video is actually going to be a Thursday, although it may be Friday, probably Thursday, a video which I'm going to be going over the Unleash the Hounds change now that we've actually played with it thoroughly, and also the Naxxramas spoilers that we've got since then. There's two, I think. There's Avenge as a Paladin Secret, and then there's also a Warrior Weapon I can't remember the name of. But anyway, I'm going to have a guest on for that one, and I'm going to be going over those two and also the Unleash the Hounds change in detail. So anyway, without further ado, let's get started, shall we? Now, top 4 from NA, and only NA. Yeah, deck list problems again. This is why the show's moved to Wednesday, not Tuesday, because I need to wait for this stuff. For this week, we actually had it from the Swiss, not from MOG, because there weren't any deck lists for MOG, as far as I know. I may be wrong, but as far as I know, there weren't any. So, again, deck list issues are a thing. I'm going to be going over the Swiss ones from NA, since that's what I've got. So, first place, we had Koroneko, who was playing Druid midrange. Now, the Druid midrange sort of list is very based around controlling the board for the early turns while getting a board presence down in the mid game and finishing out with a couple of large things. Now, the intricacies of this particular list is we do have the normal sort of Black Knight Cairn for removal and just staying on the board as far as Cairn goes. Cairn is actually usually a 3 or 4 for 1, depending on sort of how your opponent plays around it and also what they have. If they have a Silence, a Hex, etc. Then we have things like Azure Drake and a weird Stampeding Kodo tech, which is actually here to, one, get you card advantage in the case of Azure Drake, but Stampeding Kodo also gets you a kind of form of card advantage. It's mostly used for things like Harvest Golem, Loot Hoarder, Frothing Berserker, the RAR, as some people call it, or Unbound Elemental, before it actually gets any overload charges on it, which is fairly important. And I think is a very interesting tech card. Now, so the rest of the stuff, we have the pretty standard Showwind Yeti, Harvest Golem, Druid of the Claw, Keeper of the Grove. This is all normal. The one tech card in here is actually the Ragnaros. Now, the Ragnaros is sometimes a Cenarius, not usually a Hysera nowadays. It's usually a Cenarius or a Ragnaros. This deck is running Ragnaros for its direct damage, as opposed to Cenarius, which is a lot more defensive and a bit more flexible. Now, as for the spells, we have a pretty standard suite of removal, although we have a double Force of Nature instead of a singular, like, instead of one Savage Orphan combo, we have 2. That is a huge amount of burst. That is a massive amount of burst. 28 damage of burst just between those 4 cards. The combo, you play Force of Nature, Savage Roar, you get 3 4/2s, and your hero also gets 2 attacks, so it's just a huge amount of damage. Now, the other thing in here is we have the 2 Wild Growths, making it sort of a more rampy variant as opposed to the standard mid-range. Very interesting deck, especially with the double Fun Roar combo. Very strange. Now, on to second place, we had Gil, Gyll, playing Warrior Aggro, another deck I have not seen in a long time. Now, Warrior Aggro is a very fast deck. It's not quite as face rushy as something, for example, Hunter would be, or some of the mage decks. Not playing that much charge. I mean, it is still playing Kor'kron Elite and the weapons and things like that, but it's not playing an exuberant amount of charge minions. It is a very fair deck in terms of aggro, more akin to Zoo with a little bit of extra burst. Now, as for the actual minions, the charge part of it comes from the Argent Commanders, the Kor'kron Elites, which are both 4 each. We then have the weapons, Arcanite Reaper, Fiery War Axe. These are usually all going to the face, although Fiery War Axe can be used as removal early. And Warsong Commander is also used as sort of a charge enabler. Now, the interesting interaction with Warsong Commander is things like Bloodsail Raider, they gain attack based on your weapon. However, its base attack is 2, so it actually does have charge, which means you can hit for 7 with charge with that thing and Warsong Commander, which is a huge deal. Now, as for the rest of the stuff, we do have Frothing Berserker, a very persistent threat. 1-up Armorsmith to give you an edge against aggro and also against Face Rush Hunter. And then Cruel Taskmasters, which are one of the most versatile warrior cards you can have. It kills things like Lepronome, it helps deal with some of the 2 health stuff, and it also just pumps up your own thing so you can kill things. It's also an execute enabler. Very important that it's an execute enabler. The one-off Ooze also is in here. The Ooze has been a lot more popular recently. It's come back into the metagame, and you can definitely see why. The Ooze has been a ridiculously useful thing against things like Warrior and Miracle Rogue. If you kill the Assassin's Blade, it's a big deal, and if you kill something like a Gorehowl, it's a huge swing in the game. So the Ooze has definitely become very popular among some of the top players recently. Now, as for the rest of the deck, the spells, we have the Slam Execute. Now, Executes and Slam's not normally played in aggro. You normally have things like Heroic Strike. However, this deck has sort of realized that it has enough aggro through its weapons and minions, and the spells are just the minimum amount of removal you need to get past really big taunts in the case of Execute, and also draw some cards in terms of Slam. So the actual deck I really do like. The other sort of concession to card draw it's playing is Azure Drake. It's supposed to something slightly more aggressive. And I do actually like it. I have not seen a Warrior aggro deck in a long time. It's a very rare deck. Doesn't show up on ladder that much. Doesn't show up in tournaments that much. A very rare deck, and it's sort of a privilege to see one actually come this high in a tournament. Now, on to tied for third, we had Liam playing Miracle Rogue. Now, Miracle Rogue is a deck that is basically designed to play like Solitaire. Okay, basically the deck, you draw as many cards as humanly possible until you get to your Leroy Shadow Step combo, and then you kill them with 18 damage from that combination, and then any other damage you can scrape together. It is an incredibly... it's not interactive. It's incredibly uninteractive to play against. Not particularly fun to play against. Very difficult to play though. If you want to try and play this deck, you need practice. This is a very difficult to play deck, and it's very successful when played properly, but completely useless in the wrong hands. So you definitely need to learn how to play the deck effectively before you can do things. Now, as for the actual minions, we do have the Leroy combo, as I said. We have Azure Drake as sort of the core minions, which are used for pressure, along with Erdring Farseer, SI7 Loop Hoarder. These are additions so that the enemy deck has to interact with your board, as opposed to just going for your face and killing you, which is one of the problems with these decks. So by having these minions, it means that your opponent has to interact with your board, and every single drop of damage they put on the board is not going towards you, which means you can have enough time to get your combo out and kill them. The real linchpin of the deck, however, is Gadgetzan Auctioneer. Now, Gadgetzan Auctioneer draws an insane amount of cards in this deck. We've got Preparation, which makes everything free and also costs 0. Cold Blood, only 1 mana. Blade Flurry, 2 mana. Conceal, you can conceal it. Next turn, you have 5-6 mana, possibly. It depends on if you coin them out, which I doubt you would, because the coin is actually a spell you can draw with. So generally, you'll have between 7 and 8 mana, just setting up for the actual combo the next turn, and you can draw an amazing amount of cards. Pretty much everything in the deck can be prepped into, and two things that are very interesting are Shiv and Fan of Knives, which not only draw a card, but they actually draw a second one from the actual card itself. Now, the rest of the actual spells are very removal centric. Got Eviscerates, Backstab, Shiv, Cold Blood is a burst spell, but we have pretty much every single rogue spell almost. Now, the interesting ones here, Deadly Poison, which is used for the Blade Flurry, and only one Blade Flurry in this list, keep in mind. Normally they run 2. And the other one is Sap. Now, Sap is generally used to get past taunts or just to stop your opponent from killing you. And it sounds crude, but if your opponent has an A8 giant that you can't deal with, you Sap it. All you need to do is stall for your combo and make sure that when you have the combo, you can get rid of their taunts and just get through it and get all the damage you need in, because damage is very important to this deck. Overall, I would say this is one of the stronger decks in the format, but it's definitely very difficult to play and you need some practice with it. Now, finally for this week, we have the second in the tie, Call Me Hank, playing Handlock. Awesome name, by the way. Now, Handlock is a deck entirely focused around slamming the board with big minions and then giving them taunts so they kill your opponent and your opponent can't kill you. Now, what do I mean by this? The deck plays Molten Giants, Mountain Giants, Twilight Drakes, as well as Ancient Watchers with the Defender of Argus Sunfury Protector combo. Now, what this allows you to do is put down huge health minions with taunt. The Giants become 9/9s with Defender of Argus, and Ancient Watcher, while he can't attack unless you silence him with an Iron Beak Owl, obviously, actually does a lot of damage to your opponent's aggressive board, because he just can't get through it. You have to throw 2 to 3 minions in front of this thing, otherwise you just can't get through it. A 5/6 with taunt is not to be underestimated, and it can also be used as pressure early. You can go turn 1 Ancient Watcher, turn 2 Iron Beak Owl, and if you get that opening, the game is usually over. Now, as for the rest of the stuff, we have Harrison Jones to deal with weapons so you don't get burst down as much, Leroy Jenkins, which is used with Power Overwhelming, and also Faceless Manipulator for that 20 damage burst on turn 10. Which is a little bit of an out. You don't often use it, but sometimes you do, and it's a good option to have. Alex Straza is the healing. Jiraxis has fallen out of favor recently because it turns off your Molten Giants. Now, you really don't want to turn off your Molten Giants because that is one of the best cards in the deck. It means your opponent can't just attack into you recklessly, and they have to plan burst damage from 15 life over several turns, and by that point you may just have the cards you need, besides the Moltens, to just kill him. Now, as for the rest of the stuff, Big Game Hunter helps in the mirror and also dealing with things like Ragnaros, which actually kill all of your giants in one hit. Earthring Farseer is to compensate for the life tap, and the spell combination I think is very, very odd in this deck. We do have 1 Hellfire, 1 Shadow Flame, as opposed to 2 Shadow Flame or 2 Hellfire. This is normally standard. They normally play 3 as a combination of those, not 4. 4 is a little excessive, but 3 is the standard, and it's usually double Shadow Flame as opposed to double Hellfire, although it has been going the other way slightly recently, because Hunters have been dropping down. But for the longest time it's double Shadow Flame, because the Hellfire hurts yourself and it can be really awkward. Now, Soulfire, 2 of. We do have Siphon Soul, also is 2 of, and Mortal Coils are 2 of. So the rest of the spells are pretty standard, apart from that weird Shadow Flame Hellfire thing. Now, unfortunately, that's all I've got for this week. Again, shorter show, but I can only make these shows based on what I actually have. So, as for now, thank you all for watching. If you like the content, please subscribe. If you have any feedback, put it in the comment section below. If you have any suggestions for future weekly shows, again, put it in the comment section or come on Teamspeak. I'll put the information in the description. Thank you all for watching. This has been Jotto, signing off.